Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Random Musings from the Clinical Trials Guru. I have no idea what episode we're on. Somewhere between 200 and 300. I am interviewing Darshan Kulkarni. Darshan is you're like one of the first people I've ever interviewed on this show. Way back in 2010, 2011. That's a horrible picture you took. I'm seeing it right now. It's awful. You could do another one. And maybe that one's better. Let's see. Hopefully this one's better.
I hate my picture.
This one's better. This one's better. That one's good. I might use that too. You're one of the long time guests, and people love you. But we've had a 2-year pause. I haven't interviewed you.
Has it been 2 years?
I just threw that number out there, but that's what it feels like. Gun to my head, plus or minus 6 months, but yeah.
Okay. Well, we should fix that.
Yeah, we should, and we are. So let me tell you why I contacted you out of the blue. And I was actually thinking you couldn't do it because you're busy, but I texted you yesterday. I said, hey, man, let's do a podcast tomorrow, okay with you? Because I was talking to somebody who's interested in CBD research, they're hardcore. Okay. And I was like, I know the perfect guy. I just saw him on LinkedIn. He had this post that went viral, which we'll talk about CBD. Let me just see if I can interview him and selfishly pick his brain so that we can do this. But turns out that you're the man for this stuff, CBD, and it's the Wild West. Regulations changing. I don't have time to keep up with it, Darshan. I'm in California, which is maybe the capital of CBD, I think, right?
It sort of is between you guys and Colorado.
Yeah. So thank you. I appreciate you being able to do this today. I know you've been super busy. So I just wanted to pick your brain on CBD. We have a lot of people. First of all, is it patentable? Is Mother Nature patentable?
So your issue isn't Mother Nature right now. Your issue is the fact that it may be, depending on what you're talking about, and it's not the CBD itself, it's the use of the CBD, etc., and the intended use, if you will, that may be illegal for the federal government. So they may say that you cannot protect it. However, it depends on how you go at it, and there are patent lawyers who have found ways to address that. There are other issues like trademark issues, for example, because the trademark office has pushed back on it, but I think they came out with the recent guidance that talks about that as well. So do you want me to just do a quick recap of what CBD and THC and what the issue is so that everyone's on the same sort of level playing field?
Yeah, let's do that, and then I'm going to ask you some questions that I've had recently,
Okay.
Because apparently every month something changes, and I thought I thought the Farm Bill was supposed to end all that.
Nope.
And it seems like it's just the beginning of a whole bunch of different rabbit holes, and I don't want to go down those pathways.
That's my job.
Yeah, that's your job.
It's job security, damn.
That's right.
Don't take it away from me.
We should have your phone number flashing underneath right now, even before you start talking.
If you need my phone number, it's 215-948-8183. That's 215-948-8183. And my name's Darshan. But, let's get back to the basics. You've got 3 different levels. You've got your federal, you've got your state, and you've got your local level, so your city level, if you will.
Yep.
At the federal level, the use of marijuana is generally illegal. Generally. Now, that gets split up. Marijuana contains loads and loads of compounds. However, the 2 major compounds people think about are CBD and THC.
Correct.
The CBD piece, if it's used for food and cosmetics, if it's limited to certain amounts, so it's usually less than 0.3, and it's intended only for certain uses, so not medicinal uses, you might be able to get away with it. On the other hand, THC, if it's in part of that, is generally illegal. There is an exception to that. And the exception to that is you basically go through the FDA drug approval pathway. And if you go through that FDA drug approval pathway, what you get is a drug like Epidiolex, which was approved by the U.S. FDA, and that's legal to sell across the entire U.S. The
Really?
DEA
And
regulates
it
it.
has
Yeah,
THC in it.
THC in it.
But it has to be prescribed.
It has to be prescribed.
Yeah. You can't just go to a supplement store and get this.
Correct.
Okay.
So there's your CBD, there's your THC, and that's the federal level, if you will. And they're spending decades and decades of research trying to evaluate how they can use it. For example, everyone talks about marijuana has no side effects. What are people talking about? Why are they trying to regulate it? Turns out it can cause liver failure. So there's a risk of it. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but there's a risk of it. So that's your first sort of federal level. Your second level is your state level. At the state level, you have one of three situations primarily, and there are different permutations of that. But you've got your recreational use, you've got your medicinal use, and then it's just straight up illegal, right? Recreational use is you're doing it because you want to enjoy it. Medicinal use, depending on the state, they'll come out and say, here are some uses we will say that you can use them for. And it'll be, everything from epilepsy to something, to I've seen pain, to gout, I think is one of them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then some states say, we're simply not going to do it. There are fewer and fewer states that are going down that path. A lot of states, in most states that I'm seeing, it starts off medicinal and then eventually goes recreational.
Right.
Okay. And then there's your third level of it's illegal in that state, but we're just not going to enforce it. Mm-hmm. So that's called decriminalization. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. So now it's theoretically possible that your state allows you to use the cannabis or to use it in some way for medicinal uses. However, it's still illegal at the federal level, right?
And now we're talking THC products.
We're still talking THC.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
So now the Farm Bill basically came out, and what I gave to you was sort of the 50,000, 100,000 foot.
Yeah, very helpful. I need that.
Yeah.
I mean, we need to understand the whole landscape before we get into before we zoom in.
Right. So the Farm Bill came out and basically said, if you're using it for these different reasons, if you're using CBD for these different reasons, we aren't going to stop you. And as long as it's not medicinal. So now the FDA is going, okay, what does that actually mean? So they had a hearing this past Friday. And that went into, what do we want to regulate? How do we want to regulate it? So you had everyone from moms coming in and talking about how it's destroyed their kids' lives.
CBD, we're talking?
Yep, CBD.
How does CBD destroy their lives?
They've said addiction. They've talked about a few different things. Another one was you had dietary supplements and cosmetics people coming in saying you should regulate it, but you don't need much regulation. And then you had people coming in from the drug industry saying, well, these are all the side effects that we know of. So you had this range and the spectrum of controls. And the FDA is going, I'm just trying to figure out what I should be doing. So I just want to listen to you guys. What was interesting was that the FDA then started asking a couple of questions. Things like, okay, so what age is it okay to start using CBD? Are there any side effects we should be aware of?
Right.
And a lot of the people who were saying you don't need much regulation suddenly didn't have answers, which is where the concerns start coming in.
Now, for people that don't know, you're not only an attorney, you're a pharmacist.
I am.
Right? And you have active licenses in both, right?
I do have active licenses.
So do you think, I'm just asking you because I take CBD. I'm naturally high-wired, and I use it to calm down at the end of the day so I could fall asleep.
So here's the first problem with what you just said.
Yeah.
You just made a medicinal claim.
Yeah, that's right.
For a product that's intended as food.
Right.
Effectively making it a drug. Right. Effectively making it violative of federal law.
Right, but just for personal use.
Wouldn't change, right? It's still intended. And now your specific location may have decriminalized it. But if you were a CBD product owner, right? So you were selling this, and you made that same exact claim, which I've seen many, many, many times.
Right, like a personal
That's
testimonial from the owner of the brand.
right. Or they'll put an ad up saying, "Use my CBD to treat your anxiety,"
Right, right.
and
Or
that's
just take the
problematic.
edge off, like I
Yeah,
feel like the previous generation, they took the edge off. They had like a shot of Grey Goose at night or like a beer. I mean, this is like my dad, his dad, like whatever. And for me,
right.
it's CBD.
Yeah,
I think it's healthier. I'm not a clinician.
sure.
But is there an actual danger of CBD being addictive?
So there are assertions that just CBD itself could be addictive, and
Just
again,
CBD itself.
no one's really gone on and done the research as much as they'd want, right?
I see.
Most of the research, even around that, has been around THC
Correct.
because THC has some psychoactive properties.
Correct.
One of the questions the FDA asked was, "Do we know anything about the psychoactive properties of CBD?" And people didn't really know.
Now
So-
they've done like thousands of pilot studies.
But that's the problem. 1,000 bad studies don't equal one good study.
Uh, that makes sense. So essentially, what a pilot study is not a real study. I mean, they're FDA. The FDA is supposed to regulate them, but they're not being submitted to the FDA. So the FDA is just looking at it from the perspective of, is the PI maintaining oversight of their patients? Is it ethical? They're not really looking at the results, right? Is that what you're saying?
The FDA doesn't really look at the results because it's not for an application for approval.
That's right.
The-
Okay.
It's not getting published in JAMA. It's not getting
But like
published in
peer
New
reviewed
York
though,
Medicine.
like what about PubMed? I went to PubMed yesterday. I saw 2,500 studies just on CBD.
Absolutely. But here's my question: who's looking at those 2,500 studies? Is it because you'll see people publish things, but they'll be published in really bad journals that are not really read. So that's not real peer review. If I put it in, I don't know, the New Guinea Journal of CBD medication in short individuals between the ages of 4 and 7.5. Like, I'm not sure there are that many people reading that journal. So whether or not it's put out there, that's not true publication, if you will, at least not the way I see it. So it goes to that you and I discussed about having a whole different discussion in the future around clinical trial transparency, and that speaks to the process of clinical trial transparency.
Right.
You're doing these studies, but if no one's really benefiting from them or getting any actual valuable information from them, why are you doing them?
So where's the opportunity then for these CBD? I mean, I'm asking selfishly now.
Yeah.
I
Provider?
assume. I mean, I could go on PubMed and find like 2,500 articles of
Yeah.
studies of
Yeah.
nerds, physician nerds, pharmacist
Yeah.
nerds that like geek
Yeah, yeah.
out about this, and
Yeah.
maybe one of them wants to actually do a study where they submit to the FDA, and then they would theoretically hire my CRO to help them with this.
Yeah.
Is there pharmaceutical companies that will be willing to sponsor something like this?
So, few different parts. So, number one, where would you get the product from? So, for example, in the U.S., there are several different ways you could get product. One way is you import it. You get it from outside the U.S. The second way is you would get it using the University of Mississippi, which is the only federally approved facility to make marijuana.
Really?
So yeah.
I
think
knew
Mississippi
there
is
was only
one.
one, but I didn't know it was Mississippi of all places.
It's either Mississippi or Missouri.
I think
never
it was
get-
Missouri. I think it was
Could
Missouri.
be. You could be right.
Yeah.
I thought it was Ole Miss, but I could be wrong. And then the third way, which you're seeing at the state by state level, is local growers. So they don't cross federal lines.
Ah, okay. Okay.
And they're doing research only within those individual states.
And being in California, there's no shortage of these people, so theoretically I can go
But
that
you need to
route.
have research licenses. So there are specific research licenses that often go along with it, depending on the state.
Research
Like
license.
Pennsylvania.
I see.
Yeah. So Pennsylvania specifically only issued, I think it was 7 research licenses that only went to the medical schools.
And they're looking, I'm assuming what they're looking before they grant these licenses to the growers or the manufacturers is consistency per dose, right?
Well, that's going to be one of them. It's also the ability for the researcher to actually do the research, right? So that's why they didn't give it to Joe Schmo CRO, because they sort of went,
I
we
see.
don't know if you have the structure and the
So if I'm the
capability.
CRO, I need a license.
The CRO doesn't. It's sort of again, in this specific instance, it was the medical schools that got the license. So it's
Okay.
really the people doing the research. So it's really sites, really, if anything.
Yeah.
Does that
Okay.
make sense?
Yeah.
I'm thinking.
Well,
So
like,
again,
well, you know,
state does it
you have
differently,
like
but
a
yeah,
thousand manufacturers of CBD products here just in California. So I could
yeah.
theoretically approach one of them and say, "Oh yeah, you know, we're interested in doing a study." Um, so they need a license to do the
Again, I have to
study.
look at California law to
Okay.
understand
Okay.
how that would work in California. Each state is doing differently, which is
I
why
gotcha.
one of the funny things is they keep talking about we're going to legalize marijuana across the U.S. Like that's the big thing everyone talks about.
Yeah.
In my opinion, the worst thing to happen to the marijuana industry would be legalization. Do you know why?
No.
Because the moment you legalize it, now the FDA has clear jurisdiction over everything that they're doing.
Okay.
Because you're making claims about the product, right? And you're researching the product. So everyone who's got these medical marijuana licenses, well, you can't really make those claims anymore.
But you can't make them to begin with, right?
Well, you can make them under state law, right? But the
Okay.
state law has to coordinate and be compliant with federal law.
I see. I see.
There,
This is confusing. I mean, is this why your post went viral? Why did your post go viral, and what was it about?
nice pitch there.
Yeah.
Thank you. No, the post was really, again, we spoke a little bit ago around CBD, and we talked about how there was a recent hearing from the FDA. And the recent hearing from the FDA talked about, well, what is it that they're doing, and what are people considering? So I did a post on just summarizing what came out of it and what the downside and what the downstream effects would be, and yeah, that's sort of what people wanted to hear. It was a short 6-minute little spiel that I threw together literally at 1 a.m. and just recorded it because my marketing guy was like, we need to put something out there.
Interesting.
That was all it took. So you never quite know. It's had thousands of views already, which is great.
Right. Now,
And I'll send you the link. You can put it into your show notes if you will.
so I guess what I got confused on is I assumed the Farm Bill just automatically made CBD, which is a hemp-derived product with no THC in it, so just
Mhm.
CBD, legal for anybody to sell.
Not quite.
No?
Not quite.
Yeah, because now I'm reading all these stories, and this is why I texted you yesterday. One of my business partners were looking to do some IITs, but we had the idea to bootstrap the study by having a retail as well, and then giving a discount to the consumers while doing studies like PK, like a simple PK study first.
So first of all, not giving legal advice.
Yeah.
Secondly, this would not be legal advice because it would be non-confidential as well. So we'll just discuss this in general.
Yes.
And your idea was, what if we give discounts to consumers to take our product? Depending on the state, you may not be able to do that. So many states will say you cannot give the product away for free.
Really?
Yeah, there are many states that will say you can't deliver the product. They have to come pick it up.
Huh. Very interesting, because then she gave me all these articles, recent stories of CBD retail shops getting raided.
Yep.
And that kind of took us away from this idea. I mean, we never really got too far down that path, but we were researching how to potentially have a strategy for doing this. And now we're back to square one, which is maybe we just do an IIT and we figure out a way to do like a cheap study and then collaborate with a drug company later. So I guess this is the reason why you need the license if you're...
You may potentially need a license, absolutely. I don't know specifically what California is doing, but...
Yeah, interesting. So what kind of feedback did you get from your post, from people?
So people are mostly confused about CBD and what it means right now. Everyone's trying to understand, and you can see why, because it is confusing.
You don't say. You don't.
It's literally like, it's not just needling, putting a thread through a needle, if you will. It's like going through multiple needles that are positioned in a way that are going to be confusing. It's very confusing. But but yes, you've got to be careful how you do it. You've got to be careful what kind of research you're going to do. People talk about how difficult it is to do the research. It's not that difficult. Like, for example, if you are really, really interested in doing it, you could coordinate with a government agency called NIDA. And NIDA will help you with that process. But you need multiple approvals. So you need your DEA, you need your FDA, and you might need NIDA. So it all comes down to what you're trying to do and how you're trying to get there. What you're really seeing is this push.
What does NIDA stand for? NIDA?
I'd have to look it up.
Okay.
But yeah, NIDA.
Okay.
And now I'm going to look it up because you know what you asked me, and I can't stand the idea of not knowing. I'm going to guess National Institute of Drug Abuse. I'm just making that up.
Oh, okay. That would make sense.
That is actually right. National Institute on Drug Abuse.
When you've been doing it as long as you have, you can figure these things out.
And it's part of NIH, by the way.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I was thinking, because it's so hard to get an NIH grant. I think the quicker way is to collaborate with a pharma or a biotech. And is there interest from these groups?
Pharma and biotech, they're doing tons of research around it. However, it depends on who. It's not just like, I'm speaking out of turn. I don't know the answer to this question, but I don't think it's like a Novartis going out and doing the research.
Would they be doing like investigator-initiated trials?
So first of all, it shouldn't be they doing investigator-initiated trials, right? So it should be the investigator doing the investigator-initiated trial. They'd be reaching out to Novartis or to Pfizer or to GSK or whoever it is, saying, would you be interested in providing us with funding or for a product? They have no product in that space, and they would have no reason to provide the funding for that space.
Gotcha.
Unless they were getting into that. So it would be unusual for a drug company without a product in that space to go down that path. Because how do you, if the DOJ comes in, why are you paying Dr. X to do research in a product you don't even have and don't intend to get into? Because then you start thinking about kickback issues. Was it just a kickback to Dr. Smith?
I see. But how can you prove intent? I mean, they can say, we are looking at a pilot study to see if it's something worthwhile, right? I mean, there's a whole bunch of legal things there.
Yeah, sure. So the usual way it goes is you can't really ever prove intent. However, you can prove enough bricks that demonstrate intent, if you will. Okay. So they always talk about evidence is never the wall. It's a brick in a wall. So you've got to show as many pieces of evidence that help support that. So, for example, Dr. Smith happens to be your highest prescriber, number one. Number two, he's now gotten $200,000 from you. Okay. Number three, all those $200,000 were for research that he conducted but had no real result from it. Number four, he's done all this research, has no real results from it, but he keeps getting fancy dinners from you as well. So each of those bits and pieces speak to a larger picture.
Brick by brick.
Brick by brick.
I get it now. Okay, so you would have to find a company. I mean, why not the manufacturer themselves? Like, let's just throw it out there. I have nothing to do with them, but Charlotte's Web. They're like the biggest CBD manufacturer that I know of. It's the one I use.
Is that the brand or is that the strain?
That's the brand. The brand.
Is it? Okay.
They're huge. They're the biggest CBD and the most trustworthy. But I don't think they've done studies. Like,
I think there's a strain called Charlotte's Web as well, which is why I asked that question.
Oh, okay. Probably someone trying to monetize off of that. but like, why wouldn't they? Well, I guess you can ask this question two ways. Why would they want to fund a study? And why wouldn't they? Maybe it's the same thing.
Why would they want to fund the study? Because two reasons. Number one, if you want to make claims that it helps in some way, or if you expect to eventually get to a point where you want to make those claims, you want to have the studies that back that up. So the question is it going to be regulated like a drug or a food? If it's regulated as a drug, those studies aren't going to do anything for you because they're going to be really badly designed.
So the minute you attempt to make a claim, it's now regulated as a drug.
If you want to make a medicinal claim, it will be regulated as a drug.
I see.
If you make claims like makes my face look prettier, It's a cosmetics claim now. Because pretty is not a disease state, or lack of pretty is not a disease
But
state.
if it says proven to reduce acne, or
There you go.
uh-huh.
There you go.
No, so what's the difference between this route and a nutraceutical doing a study? Is there no difference?
There would be a huge difference actually, because a nutraceutical is a food, so it would be regulated as a food. So you can make specific types of food claims, and if it's an actual dietary supplement, then you can make things like specific types of claims under the DSHEA Act. The FDA, however, has come out and specifically said cannabis in general is not a dietary supplement. Now, there may be exceptions and stuff that they explore as a result of the Farm Bill, but that's not where we are this second.
Cannabis is not a dietary supplement according to the FDA.
Correct. They actually had a comment about that.
Okay. So what do they consider it then? Either a food or a drug, depending on the applications, right?
Correct. Or cosmetics, depending on what you're doing. So all those different formats and formulations.
So then I guess it makes more sense for someone like Charlotte's Web not to pursue this, because if, they can...
Here's your problem.
Yeah.
If you don't pursue that, but the FDA does get the authority under, which they will under the Farm Bill, right? So now you cannot be in a situation where your competitors can have enough evidence to make certain claims, but you don't.
Oh, if they do it. If they choose to go, I see.
It's very confusing.
But so once the FDA, so you're assuming this is eventually going to be legal nationwide,
or even statewide, right?
Or statewide, yeah. So then you will have the competitors doing these studies, investing. Yeah. They're able to now make the claims because they've done the work. Okay, right. So there is an incentive for them to try to get ahead of the curve.
Depending on who you are, where you are, if you meet the right criterion for what indication, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, because right now what I see in the CBD space is just a branding play. Like everyone, all the makers just assume, okay, people are going to get educated. They're going to know we can't make claims, but they're going to want the most trustworthy brand. The reason I buy Charlotte's Web and not some other, Joe Schmo CBD, right? I mean...
Just to be clear, you aren't getting paid by Charlotte's Web, right?
I'm not. I wish I was. I mean, we can do a study with them. I'd be happy to do that. But yeah, they're way too big. I would probably get Joe Schmo's CBD as a client, which is good. Maybe we can get ahead of the curve and help them capitalize on the market share.
Well, where to get the lawyer to help with that.
I wonder where I gotta go, man. Good thing we got your phone number on the video.
There you go.
This is confusing, man, but I appreciate you shedding some light on this. I think it's a little more clear now.
Clear as mud.
Yeah, I mean, I'm better off after this interview than I was before. Let's just put it that way. And I hope somebody listening, watching can get something out of it. Really, the last part that we discussed, whether the incentive is there for the manufacturers to do studies. And I think you answered that clearly with the FDA taking over the regulations on this, right? With the drug, with the drug or the cosmetics.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Interesting. Are you gonna do? Was your post that went viral? Was it like an article, podcast? What was it?
It was a podcast. But there's also an article coming out about that, and there'll be a video that comes out about that, and maybe an Instagram post out of it.
Maybe write a book on it?
I'm already thinking of writing a different book on something, actually. Okay. I'll talk to you about it offline.
Okay, good. All right. Anything else? I'll have links underneath YouTube. If you're listening on the podcast, I'll have links in the show notes. But just tell him your number one more time. His name is Darshan Kulkarni. He's big on LinkedIn. Big everywhere else. What's your phone number?
215-948-8183. That's 215-948-8183. Or you can find me on both Twitter and Instagram at Darshan Talks. That's DARSHAN Talks, TALKS.
That's right. I forgot about Twitter. You are big on there too. All right. Thank you very much, Darshan. Thank you, everybody, for listening, watching, and we'll catch you all later. I'm sure we'll do more on this because these things change every month.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. And there's some other cool topics we discussed that we should talk about anyways.
Yes, we will.
Okay.
All right. Thank you,
Stay tuned,
everybody.
guys.
Bye bye.
Bye.